In the 1960s and 70s, the race was on for steam locomotive enthusiasts to try their best and buy and save whatever steam locomotives they could from the scrapyard in hopes of preserving them for the future. From terriers to peppercorns, people were trying their best to save these steam machines. There was, however, one man that may have unintentionally made a massive contribution towards saving some of the London, Midland and Scotland's finest express engines. Sir William Billy Haygate Edmund Colborne Butlin was born in Cape Town in 1899, but moved to Canada with his family at a young age. He became part of the Canadian Army and served in the First World War, deciding to stay in England afterwards. There he joined a travelling fair running a hoopla stall. He made his games easier to win, which resulted in more business, which went on to allow him to purchase more and more stalls, eventually leading to him running his own fair. Over time, he managed to set up several amusement parks all over the UK, with some in England, Scotland, Wales and even the Isle of Man. These eventually became holiday resorts with lodgings for guests as well as meal services, on top of the attractions available such as rides, carnival games and zoos. During the Second World War, some of the resorts were used as training camps by the army and others located close to the sea were used as navy establishments. After the war, the massive economic boom allowed Butlin to expand his empire into Ireland with plans to eventually set up a resort all the way in the Bahamas. He started construction of a camp in Bermuda in 1949, but by 1950 the project was abandoned and sold off due to American tourists showing little interest in the holiday camp style of vacation. From then on, he focused more on maintaining his holiday empire back in Europe. In the 1960s, Butlin felt that he needed some new attractions at some of his camps, and as such decided to purchase several redundant steam locomotives from British Rail, who were starting to replace steam with diesel power at the time. The idea was to simply leave the engines on a section of track as an interactive display piece, where visitors could simply climb in and out of the engine's cabs and mess with the controls. He purchased two former LMS locomotives, number 6203 Princess Margaret Rose and number 6100 Royal Scot. Both were cosmetically restored and taken to holiday camps, with the Princess going to Pwllheli in Wales and the Scot going to Skegness. The Royal Scot was one of the LMS's most well-known engines, having been sent to America for an exhibition and being used for much publicity by pulling expresses. So when it arrived at the Skegness site on the back of a Pickford's low loader, it was greeted with the pipes and drums of the 1st Battalion Royal Scots. Butlin knew how to get good publicity. Later he purchased another 6 steam engines, 2 LMS Duchess engines, 3 former LBSC Terriers and an old shunting tank engine. All were cosmetically restored and displayed at various parks. It wasn't however until the 1970s that people realised the unintentional significance of Butlin's engines. While there were already plenty of Terriers preserved and little demand for old shunting engines, the 4 big LMS engines were all express locomotives, with the 2 Duchess engines famously streamlined to head the Coronation Expresses being 2 out of the only 3 left. Only one other Princess Royal existed outside of the camp and only one other Royal Scot, Scots Guardsman, was spared the cutter's torch. Had Butlin not wanted a few more tourist attractions, the engines would have likely been melted down or simply left to rust. After 10 years, Butlins had started to lose interest in the now rusting engines, so several small groups formed to purchase the engines for preservation and restoration. One of the Terriers ended up restored in the Isle of Wight, with the other 3 tank engines either being restored or saved as a static display. One of the Duchess engines was streamlined again and is on display at the National Railway Museum, while the other was restored and runs various enthusiast specials as well as visits smaller preserved railways. The Princess locomotive was towed out of the park on the same railway it arrived on and moved to the Midland Railway, where it still resides and operates. Lastly, the Royal Scot was moved to the Bressingham Steam Museum, where it fluctuated between running and being a static exhibit. It suffered many mechanical issues while in preservation, but those are a story for another day. So what's the moral of this story? Actions have consequences, but not always bad ones. If Butlin had not purchased the engines for display or not wanted a new attraction for his parks, then we wouldn't have had the chance to preserve some of the LMS's finest express engines, which otherwise would have been lost to the cutter's torch. So maybe it's not so much actions have consequences, but more, sometimes you don't realise the significance of your actions, but time will make you see that more clearly? Whatever the moral of the story is, let's just count ourselves lucky, eh? Subscribe for more.